There's this phrase that you've probably heard, and the phrase goes like this: there's no stupid questions. And I get why people say it, because they're trying to encourage people to be curious, make people feel safe, open up, basically they're saying, and it's a safe place. But here's the problem. I don't actually believe that that is true. In my work with leaders, in families, as a family therapist, and with married couples, I've seen that some questions don't create clarity at all. They actually create confusion. Some questions don't move us forward. They keep us stuck. And some questions quietly protect our comfort and our ego and our fear. And while we pretend to be curious, they're making things worse. The quality of your life is directly related to your willingness to have courageous conversations. And all courageous conversations occur because someone has had the bravery to ask a courageous, high-quality question. So today we're going to talk about the difference between good questions and bad questions. Not to shame anybody, but to help you grow and to think and to lead better and to engage others better. Because if you want better answers in your interactions, you got to start by asking better questions. So let's go ahead and dive in. Something I did recently, and I want to share something I feel like is brave, is I invited somebody to go skiing with me that I don't know very well, just to get to know them better. I don't know how it's going to work out. I think it's going to hopefully work out pretty good, but we'll see how it goes. Now, there's good questions and there's bad questions. That was a good question. I mean, I had to let go of the outcome. I had to actually step out. And the reason I share that is to challenge you to do the same, because we grow when we do brave things in our lives. And in fact, nothing's more important to your growth and your mental health and your confidence than reaching out and not playing it safe. So, topic of the podcast today is, yes, there are stupid questions, and let's talk about why. Welcome to the Decide Your Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Adam Gragg. I'm a coach and a family therapist. I founded Decide Your Legacy in 2012, and what we do is help leaders and their teams dig deep, face the issues they're avoiding so they can take productive action, move the needle, make progress. And from my point of view, everybody's a leader. You're a leader if you have influence, and you all have influence. People are watching you. I'm going to discuss 3 decisions today that leaders make that stop them from asking these stupid questions. And just kind of a caveat is, stupid's a strong word, but when we think about it's bad questions, questions that don't move people forward, don't let that trigger you. I'm not saying you're stupid if you ask these types of questions. I ask them. I struggle with them. I make podcasts for first myself, and then I make it to help other people. So this has helped me primarily. And it's going to be helpful to you, though. So a question is a better question, when it opens people up, when they are triggered to engage, when they feel as if they have to think. And I realized as a family therapist years ago that the way people approach questions and conversations has a humongous impact on the outcome of that conversation. So the way the conversation starts has an impact on how it actually goes to a great extent, because questions can trigger high emotion. And we don't want to get people engaged in their amygdala, which is the emotional center of their brain. We want to get them engaged in their prefrontal cortex, where they can think and process information. I will train people, leadership teams, first and foremost at the beginning, on how to have a good conversation, how to have an interaction that can move the needle, can make progress. So you leave that interaction feeling inspired to take action. A bad question is one where it just doesn't feel good to the other person when you asked it. It doesn't feel good. You leave the interaction feeling like, man, did we make any progress on that? Or did I have to put my energy into defending myself? A bad question relates to status, where people one-up each other, where it's based on position and title. A bad question has this sense of judgment to it. And as we talk today, I'm going to give you details, but bad question or stupid questions are going to be closed-ended versus open-ended, which means a closed-ended question leads to a yes or a no answer. It doesn't get somebody to think. An example would be, did you get that thing done? Yes or no. It's not that that's a unnecessary question in certain situations, but I'd even in that situation encourage you to make it an open-ended question. Bad questions are leading. People are assuming in the question that you have some sort of an answer that they pick up on that you'd like them to give you, rather than a non-leading question, which is letting go of the outcome. It's letting go of your fear, basically. And stupid questions have a negative tone. They don't have genuine curiosity attached to them, and they don't lead towards clarity. So, if you have some questions can keep people stuck, because they trigger defensiveness, and they sense that you're trying to control the outcome. They sense that you're trying to control what they share, which is not a good thing. And it's something that will close people down. So the first decision that leaders make to move the needle, to make progress, is they admit that not all questions are good questions. And some of the questions they've been asking have not been good questions. The reason is that if they can't admit that, they don't have enough self-awareness to try to work on them. Try to work on it. They're intentionally trying to frame their questions in a way that's going to help everybody make progress. So they're letting go of this image management of having to look like the leader, of having to control the outcome. That's self-awareness. Self-awareness is powerful. So that's the decision you make. You can choose to become more self-aware of yourself and how you're interacting with people. And you have these questions, too, that are fear-based, which makes them stupid questions, meaning that your own ego, your own fear is leading you to asking the question in a way where you get the answer that you want in that situation. And it's all fear. It's all you trying to control things, which doesn't help people to open up. It can happen unintentionally that people ask these questions that shut people down. It happens unintentionally because you are used to approaching things with a certain tone. You're used to approaching things with a posture that closes people down. And yeah, we can go into body language. I'm not going to do that here because I don't think it's as nearly as relevant as self-awareness, because you can have body language that seems open, but your tone, because you're not self-aware, is actually going to close people down. Amazingly, I can ask things, use the exact same words and share it in a way that shuts people down. For example, I think Troy is funny. Troy's the Decide Your Legacy podcast producer. And I say to Troy, how did you get so funny? That's a curious question. I think he'd probably respond to that in a positive way. Or I could say, same words, how did you get so funny, Troy? And you can see in my tone that I have a level of annoyance in the posing of the question. How did you get so funny? I mean, you can ask it really quick, and it can be judgmental. And then you can even change that, and your tone and the word why can go in front of it, and why often closes people down. Because why has this, just the connotation to the word why can actually, with people psychologically, make them feel as if they're boxed into a corner. So, why are you so funny? Why are you so funny? And I could even change the word to something negative like obnoxious. And that word, how did you get so obnoxious, Troy? Can be phrased in a way that can sound really judgmental. Or if I'm lighthearted about it and my tone is like, man, how did you get to be so obnoxious? And it can create a non-defensive posture based on my tone. Really important. So it's something you want to work on. It's something you want to practice. It's something you want to be aware of. And good leaders, great leaders, have the self-awareness to realize that their tone does have an impact, as does timing, as does the word we use at the front of the question. And the most impactful words I've found in my experience is what or how, as far as phrasing a question. What or how leads to the best result. Or it can be things like elaboration type questions, like tell me more, give me an example. Give me an example. So, and sometimes people can they can believe that they're asking a question where they sound responsible or wise, but they're actually really shutting people down. So one thing that I've seen with some leaders is they can manipulate in the way that they ask questions, because they'll ask multiple questions at once, which can be an avoidance tactic of not putting someone in a position where they can ask the one most important question. And so if I'm in a coaching session, if I'm in a coaching group session, I'm going to correct that. I'm going to say that was multiple questions. Which one would you like them to answer first? And sometimes people don't like that, who are used to asking complicated questions, because they've gotten their way based on asking those types of questions. You want to ask one question at a time. Often as well, they can sound smart in their questions, but they're really leading because it's not a question. And that is one big point, is that sometimes we ask questions, they're not really questions. They're just phrased as a question. That's all they're doing. So, for example, someone could say like, X, Y, and Z company made this decision, and then everyone in the room knows that X, Y, Z company is not doing too well, right? So there's a bias from when they present the question. And they say X, Y, and Z company made this type of decision here. What do you guys want to do? So it sounds good on the surface, but they've already led the question with phrasing it related to this company that's struggling. And so, of course, they're not going to want to answer in a way that's aligned with that company's decision-making process, whether it's good or bad. They're closing the answers to that question. And that's a problem right there. So it sounds responsible, sounds wise, but really it's avoidance. And that's what happens with questions, is the bad ones, the stupid ones, are avoiding the core issue and addressing the topic that really needs to be actually addressed. So the second decision that really great leaders make when they're asking questions is they're letting go of the outcome. They're letting go of control. And basically what that means is they're letting go of listening to their ego and making decisions that are ego-based. So I deal with some clients, and over time this changes and everything, but there can be this status orientation. It can be this, where do you have a lake house, or what kind of travel do you go on? That kind of thing. And usually what I feel when that becomes the center of the interaction, or it's subtly planted in the interaction, is that it's a status orientation. And status is how somebody describes somebody else that they don't actually know. They don't actually know you, but they're equating status to you, which doesn't say anything about your relationship with them. So people who name drop will often do it in a way where it's status oriented. We don't want to do that because that's ego driven. Now, great leaders, they let go of that. And amazingly, you don't have to actually, you can have tremendous success in life and not be ego-driven. It's not this universal thing. I mean, I know very, very financially successful people who I would not say are ego-driven. And you wouldn't necessarily know what they do or how they travel or where they have a ski, home. But I know what they do and how they live. And it's incredibly encouraging because there's no equation, there's no perfect way of identifying how much success somebody has by what you see externally. That's a fallacy. It really is. So you want to be the person who is willing to go first in asking questions, to let go, and to see that there's real freedom when you do let go. Because that's where the good stuff happens. When you let go of the outcome, it's bravery. And you can ask questions that provide a sense of safety for people. You can get to see people openly engaged and energized when you phrase the question in a way where everybody has to think, where they feel safe, where they know that the outcome and your answer is not something that they want to control because they're brave. Now, avoidance comes in all kinds of different forms. I mean, people can avoid through excuses. They can avoid through justification and minimization, but it's all fear. And it's all this fear of actually being in situations where you can engage, where you can be called out potentially, because your behavior is then in a position where you could be called out on it. But brave people do that. They want the feedback. They want the insight. They want to know that they can grow, and they want other people in their corner. They don't want to be in a status-based position. They don't want to be in a situation where the questions they ask are closed-ended and open-ended, because they see the blessings in letting go and the freedom that's on the other side and the growth that's on the other side. So they let go of control. And, if you want to ask and start asking better questions, well, first of all, letting go, you got to let go of this, I'm compelled to ask a certain question or to make a certain statement. When you're compelled, your emotions are very high and you have this sense of urgency. But often that urgency is not driven by what's most important. It's driven by ego, your own fear. And you want to let go of that, because you'll end up doing things that damage your career and your relationships and the dynamics you have in relationships. You want to have this orientation of saying, like, I want to listen and learn so I can become better. And it's not about me, it's about them. It's about helping other people. You will have people in your life that are takers. Everybody does. And you'll have people in your life that are givers. And over time, one of the great parts about life is you can start engaging in the givers much more and identifying the givers where it's not about them and their ego. It's actually about helping other people and growing. And they're the ones that are willing to ask the open-ended questions. So they're the ones that are willing to ask the non-leading questions. They're the ones that are willing to think and let go of their ego and ask those better questions. So you want to pay attention to that in your own self. What is your objective? Is it to connect or is it to get status? Is it to learn and listen? Or is it to feel good about yourself and to not actually be challenged? Are you saying this and are you agreeing because you simply want to placate? Or do you really want to engage and learn and grow and build the relationship? That's crucial right there. So if you want to get better, you want to internally look at yourself and check your motives before you ask the question, before you speak, before you share. And if I could give leaders one thing to think about, if you want to ask a better question, have the orientation you're going to learn as much as you can and that you're going to grow as much as you can. You're going to help as much as you possibly can. And that leads me to the third decision that great leaders make. And they say that it's not about me. It's not about me. They let go of it being about themselves. And that's a very brave thing to do. So when they are saying it's not about me, then they're learning to let the other person have their place in the interaction. They're willing to say, I can help them. I can actually help somebody else in this situation. And in this interaction, and if you go into interactions and they get and pick up on the fact that you are trying to help them, that you're trying to encourage them, then they're going to be open to those interactions first and foremost, and they're going to actually let their guard down. And it's going to take some time. So check out the article. This is a brand new article that I have coming out. It's called, it's the same article, same title as the podcast. Yes, there are stupid questions. Let's talk about why. And in that article, I'm going to list some open-ended questions that are my favorites to ask. And you'll have a chance to get a PDF of those questions as well through that article. So you want to check that out. Goes with this podcast. Good stuff. So in review, great leaders, when it comes to asking questions, they don't ask stupid ones. Instead, they make the decision to admit that sometimes they can ask stupid ones so they can change. They make the decision to let go of the outcome, and they make the decision to not make it about themselves. And here's the truth, man. Asking questions doesn't automatically make you wise. Asking intentional questions, asking courageous questions, asking honest questions, asking the right questions in the right fashion does. Bad questions give you short-term comfort. Bad questions are just another disguise for avoiding. Bad questions just maintain the status quo. Bad questions are self-protective. Good questions create clarity. Good questions create connection. Good questions create results. So this week, pay attention to the questions that you're asking, especially when you feel stuck, when you feel frustrated, when you feel defensive. Don't ask questions that feel the easiest or feel compelled. You feel compelled to ask. Ask the ones that feel the most honest and that deal with the biggest issue at hand. Because better questions don't change conversations. Actually, they change relationships and they change lives. So in the next episode, you're really going to want to check this out because it's on being encouraging as a leader, which actually encouragement to give other people courage, which as a leader if you're the guy who gives people courage, then you're going to be in a position where other people are going to be less defensive of your questions, no matter how you pose them, because they are going to know your motives. And the bigger the connection, the deeper the connection, people understand the motive behind the question. So it doesn't mean you can't ask stupid questions anymore. It just means that they're not going to necessarily be defensive even if you do ask a stupid question. And they're going to be able to say, let's go deeper in this and even try to rephrase your question so it can be answered. And, if this podcast challenged you, which I know it does, me personally, so share it with another leader on your team, man. Share it with somebody in your family who's ready to grow. Share it, and then ask yourself one better question today for your own journaling, and ask one better question to somebody else as well. And so growth is an ongoing process. We decide, and then we act, and then we repeat. So we grow through gaining insight, which you gain today, and then we have to actually make a commitment and then take an action. That's the growth process. We have to take an action. So what insight did you gain today, and what action are you going to take today? 80% of transformation and change is taking action. Only 20% is insight. So you want to take some action. An action you can take as well as follow Decide Your Legacy, and then leave it a rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And you can follow our blog at Decide Your Legacy as well. And then another thing you can do is subscribe to Shatterproof Yourself Light. So you get 7 small steps to a giant leap in your confidence. And you can hit the link as well. So to decide means that you're eliminating other options. You're like, man, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get it done. You're writing it down. You're telling somebody about it. Your legacy is the impact your life has on other people, not just right now today, but when you're actually gone. And there's no positive change in your life unless you decide to change, and your legacy depends on the decisions that you make today. So, in closing, as I always do, live the life today that you want to be remembered for 10 years after you're gone. You decide your legacy, nobody else. I appreciate you greatly, and I'll see you next time.